the trances they're in are largely not useful for the outcomes they want.
That is very true.
So,
I'm just looking for a trash container.
I'll wait here.
You're not one.
I'm not one?
I'll give you a trash.
You are what you drink. If you're looking for a boring NLP lecture, you should leave now. Because the first thing I have you do is stand up, look at each other, and go, boo! Because the power is in the playfulness. If you're going to do hypnosis, you're going to do NLP, anything that deals with the human mind, you got to play. That's why I tell people you need to learn hypnosis first before you become good at NLP. Because the bias of most NLP training is they take this very large hypnotic yardstick, or neurolinguistic yardstick, and stick it straight up your butt. Because because it's so formulaic, it's so do this, then do this, then do this, and you have to keep track of so much minutia, you become terrified to make a mistake, and you become a slave to the script and the pattern. Whereas hypnosis is the sloppiest, easiest, most powerful, forgiving form of change work on the planet. You can mess up 10 times, fix it on the 11th time, and nobody will ever know. Once you understand the principles that govern the mind and how they all work, it becomes very, very easy to induce trance anytime you want, because they're already there. Most hypnotic inductions are rituals for the hypnotist, not the client. Like now. Come back to the room. Oh shit, he did it to me. I remember when Doreen first started showing up at our sleepwalker meetings.
Come back in the room.
How are we doing on time, Big John? 22? I'll just let it run. Just if this light starts flashing red or something, let me know. So. All right. Well, since we're getting started, I like to find out, like I was telling Malcolm and Igor and Galina, is I advertise a topic, but ultimately what I do for everybody is I try to find out what it is that you want to learn. What is it you want to take home? What's the application that made you want to drive all the way out here from wherever it is you came from? That if you left here tonight with that, it was time well worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So sometimes I give full freedom for us to deviate from the topic if enough people want to go that direction. So that being said, let's start with Malcolm. Malcolm, what do you want to take home this week, today?
I want to take home. I want to, I guess, go back practicing the things that I've already done, but have gotten busy with those things and not,
Name three.
Not used.
Name three. 3 things you've learned but haven't used, that you want to practice.
Okay. Well, you mentioned on the site to use the techniques more for influencing people.
Okay, to do what specifically?
And I tend to start just delving into facts instead of
Very good. Okay.
communicating better with the emotions.
Excellent. All right. Anything else? Because I'm going to hit Doreen next.
That's fine.
Okay. Doreen, what do you want to take home today? What do we get out of today?
Marketing.
Marketing. There's a deviation. Actually not. You want to read some really good hypnotic language, classic NLP style language, read your shampoo bottle. Okay. What about marketing specifically?
I would like to know how to use the right wording to attract people.
To attract people.
But if they're interested.
That's probably an important distinction, to keep them interested, right? Because how many of us go to places, and there's lots of words, but after about the second or third sentence, we're like, right? Darren, right?
Derek.
Derek, what do you want to take home?
All right, so from this,
I like him already. He's got energy.
Drop them in the trance,
Uh-huh.
pull them out, those mechanics.
Uh-huh.
More around it is to be able to covertly influence people.
Okay, so drop, you like instant induction kind of stuff?
Instant, yeah, street hypnosis, call it, whatever. Do that. Covertly, Darren Brown.
All in 3 hours.
Paying with paper. Well,
Paying with paper?
I'm sure you can do it if you're not sidetracked.
You can ask John what he's seen me do.
Exactly.
And what was your name again?
Laura,
Laurel. Okay. Tell me what you want, sweetie.
I emailed you.
I know you did.
Oh, okay. So you define my expectations or just restate them?
I want to know what's important to you about what you're taking home tonight.
Okay. Well, find, I would say I can pretty reliably get in rapport with people
Mm-hmm.
almost all the time, but I would like to have a more assured way of doing that, to feel that it's possible under all circumstances, not just selective circumstances where I'm already comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and then to, to sustain that rapport.
Sustain rapport. So give me an example of a situation where you're not necessarily comfortable. Like when some guy at the front of the room is calling on you and telling you to...
No, I'm entirely comfortable. I'm just trying to think of the right answer here.
Mhm.
So maybe in some sort of situation where it's a little more corporate than I'm used to,
Okay.
where people are more formal than I'm used to. So in other words, in any situation where it's more casual, even if it's business related,
Mhm.
it's easy for me to, hang with that. But
Okay.
when it's a little more formal and stiffer, and you haven't really felt out people's humor, and you can't necessarily assume anything. So ordinarily the way I establish rapport is through something funny, or
Through something funny? Okay.
kind of familiar maybe,
Okay.
or something in a more casual sense. So I'm good in those environments.
Okay.
But when they're stiffer, it's harder.
Okay. Core skills. Actually, what you're talking about goes more to what we call in my system state control.
I'm sorry, state control?
Yeah. I'm going to teach you guys what I call the critical path of influence. It's a 6-stage formula that you can shorten down to basically 2. But if you ever you're in any situation and you really don't know what to do, you just implement these 6 steps in the order and sequence that I give them to you, and you'll pretty much have as much influence as you want or need. Okay? It's the one thing missing from NLP and most Ericksonian forms of hypnosis. Because basically all they do is tell you to get rapport and be confusing. It's pretty much what they do, and people wonder why they get thrown out of boardrooms or whatever. Most of what I do has been honed in the real world under very hostile situations. And then I take that stuff back into the treatment room, and then I use it on my patients. My specialty clinically, by the way, for those of you who don't know much about me, and I'll give you my whole laundry list in a minute, my specialty is physiological illness that has as its cause repressed emotion. Okay, I don't get smoke cessation or weight loss. That's other people get that. Okay.
So would you call that psychosomatic?
I would, but psychosomatic has certain attachments to it that aren't necessarily true. It's like when you say placebo. You say placebo, people automatically think it's an illusion, it's fake, it's not real. When in fact all it really means is the mind is doing something we don't understand. It's like when you say hallucination. You say hallucination, hallucination just means how is the experience being generated? Is it being generated from outside of us or inside of us? But we don't see it that way. We see it as fake or illusory. But that's not what's going on. When you see some of the, how many of you people here have seen some of my stuff on YouTube? Have you guys watched anything?
I think maybe I have.
Have you seen any of the stuff where I do the spinning?
No.
You haven't seen the spinning? If we have time and we want to play with it, I'll let you guys play with that tonight. That's instant somnambulism. And I use it to take away herpes outbreaks, multiple sclerosis, 25-year-long cases of chronic constipation, toothaches, migraines, backaches, knee pain, high blood pressure, in minutes. I've two, what's the word they use? Catalog cases of tumor shrinkage by as much as 50% from a 2-minute intervention. Okay? There's a lot of things that we're taught in a certain way, and it's okay, but we're still doing a lot of things, hypnotically speaking, that were discovered hundreds of years ago, and we haven't really advanced beyond it. There's a lot of neuroscience that cuts through a lot of bullshit. Bullshit being a technical term which I haven't come up with a cool acronym for yet, but I will.
Bullshit.
Yeah, bullshit. Okay, so I'm all about results in the real world right away. Okay, a lot of the stuff I'll be talking about, you may have heard from other trainers. That's okay. Okay, but roll up your sleeves, do the drills, and get the skills is what we're about. Okay, sir, what's your name again?
Larry.
Larry, what do you want to take home today?
Well, I have a certification in hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
Did that a few years ago. I plan to retire from software engineering in a couple of years, and so I'm right now putting together a plan.
Not necessarily. I was in the men's room for a minute, with those instructions.
So I'm putting together a plan as to what I want to do then.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight I'm really kind of here to see how somebody else does it, other than the way my other teacher did it.
Okay.
And
Did you train at HMI, by any chance?
No.
Oh, where'd you train?
Michael Benner.
Okay. Bennett Stellar? Bennett Stellar? Is that? Okay, because when you say Bennett, I thought of Bennett Stellar, which is a very well-known and respected hypnosis trainer.
Michael Benner.
Okay, I don't know him.
Meditative hypnosis.
Okay, right on. Okay. You, sir, who came in.
Oh, you noticed?
Yes, I did.
I tried to.
I noticed you were trying to be quiet about it. It's all right.
I didn't realize it. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it.
It's all right.
I didn't even know we'd begun.
We're not. I'm just getting kind of a groundwork to trying to figure out, because what I'd like to do is I create the lesson plan on the spot for the people once I know who's here. So I want to know, what do you want to take home today? What do you want to get out of this class?
I really came here to be seen and not heard, but whatsoever you want. But just to see what you, in general, you think so-called Ericksonian communication is like.
What I think it's like?
Well, no, what you think. Well, yeah. What's wrong with the word think?
Nothing.
Okay.
Okay. But so you just want to hang out and kind of be the fly on the wall. All right. John, what do you want to take home today?
I'm actually really interested in the state control stuff.
State control? State control is where it's at. It's not the language. I know that sounds weird coming from a guy who's going to teach you about conversational hypnosis. But anybody ever ever work with somebody trying to use a language pattern and you just know they're trying to pull something on you? You ever wonder why? It's because their state isn't right. You ever try to set an anchor on somebody, then go back and try and refire the anchor and it doesn't work? You know why? Because your state isn't right. Anchors, the human nervous system is a holographic information processing network. It's the most sophisticated one we have short of the universe itself. However, when you go to set an anchor, there's a state you're in, there's a state that your subject is in. Your proprioceptive nervous system locks into that state, and it becomes part of the key that re-triggers the state. So that's why many times when you try to set, right here, does anybody here not know what I mean when I say set an anchor? Okay. Do you have a favorite song?
Yes, the Rush song.
Okay. Everybody, watch this. Come on, get happy. Okay, notice how everybody just got a big old smile on their face, right? That's an anchor. It's Pavlov's stimulus response mechanism. Human beings are natural anchoring machines. That's how the first way that we learn. But it's not our first language. Our first language is actually kinesthetic, deep kinesthetic and proprioception. And when we talk about state control, what we're really talking about in the world according to David is the ability to tap into a level of synchronicity and vibrational, the word is coherence actually, that we actually developed in the womb with our mothers. It's a level of nonverbal pre-conscious processing that causes people's emotional states to shift and their perceptual filters to change in such a way that they become predisposed to only focusing on the aspects of our communication that reinforce the message we're trying to send. That's not something you'll necessarily hear in an NLP class, because it doesn't come from NLP. It comes from advanced neuroscience. Okay? Anybody here know who Paul Ekman is?
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't, he is well worth studying. Paul Ekman is the world's leading authority on emotions and facial expression. He wrote a book called Emotions Unveiled, I think it is, or Emotions Revealed, which he talks about a concept called the emotional refractory period. And we'll get to Igor and Galina in just a second. But this is why we keep coming back to the state control thing. What he discovered in his studies on emotion and how it relates specifically to conversational hypnosis, anchors, and everything else, is that, first of all, you do not realize you've had an emotional shift until you're in it. You don't get a 10-second warning that says, warning, warning, Igor, you are about to get pissed off, danger, danger. Okay? He's 5 or 10 seconds into the emotional state and suddenly realizes it's happened. What nobody realized up until very recently was that these emotional states, whatever state your body is in, it wants to maintain. If you're in it, are you up for Toastmasters or NLP?
Oh, NLP.
NLP's here. Toastmasters is there. It's okay. Come on in.
You don't feel like giving any speeches tonight.
That's all right. That's my job. By the way, if you guys feel a little compressed, feel free to spread out. I'm very casual with the way I do things. People who sit closest get the best stuff. Getting back to the emotional refractory period and why this is important. First of all, understand this. All emotions are trance states. Period. The higher the level of neurological arousal, the faster the critical factor of the conscious mind checks out. Okay? In the world according to David, all hypnosis is any process that has two factors in it that leads to these: absorption in the experience and a continually narrowing focus of attention. If you have these two elements, you have what is classically defined by most conventionally trained hypnotists. By the way, I don't write this stuff on the board for you. I write it for me, because this is how I process. But if you can't see something, you want me to repeat something, just let me know. Absorption. Anybody here ever a little child? Absorption.
No. What was the question?
Oh. Was anybody here, question, has anybody here ever been a little kid? I always get that laugh for some reason. Now, how many people, when you were a little kid, played pretend? I know you did. I can tell. She's got that naughty look. What did you play pretend at, Laurel?
Well, I used to pretend that I either lived in the ocean or inside a tree.
Inside a tree. Cool. So like a dryad or something?
Exactly.
Right on.
I believe that the hollows in the trees
Uh-huh.
were entryways to a whole other world full of dryads.
And did the trees talk to you?
I'm sorry?
And did the trees talk to you?
Well, they communicated,
Yeah.
not verbally.
But you could hear them, right?
Yes, I could.
Right? And you talked back, right?
Yes, I did.
Were you asleep?
No,
Were you focused?
completely.
Were you completely absorbed in the experience?
Absolutely.
Welcome to trance. Did you play pretend when you were a kid, Igor?
Yeah.
What did you play at?
Oh, different things. I don't know.
How many people played soldier when they were little kids?
Yeah.
Right? Or cops and robbers, cowboys and Indians, teacups, cowboys, right? And we all know that when we're out in the backyard and we're 5 years old, we pick up that stick lying on the ground. We know in the first 5 minutes that we pick it up, they're coming.
That's an anchor.
That's an anchor, especially in LA, right? We know in the first 5 minutes we pick up that stick, that it's just a stick for the first 5 minutes. But the more we play with the stick, pretty soon it's a real MK or an AK-47. There's real bad guys hiding behind the trees, and we're shooting and ducking and jiving. Were you asleep? No. Were you focused? Were you absorbed in the experience? Ladies and gentlemen, if you can engender that, you can have anything you want. Because that's all we're doing. Any process that gets you there, you can make or create any effect you want. So in the world according to David, hypnosis is, the technical term is the bypass of the critical factor and the establishment of acceptable selective thinking. We've been throwing that definition around for a long time, and a lot of people know it. But really what we're talking about is any process that leads us to a state of absorption and focus that is different from the one we're currently in. Okay? And all I have to do to make that happen is pause. And your focus changes. So it's not the language that I use, necessarily. By the way, can everybody hear me okay? Because that's kind of noisy. I don't know if everybody can hear me. If we can get the music turned off, that would be good. That's why I kind of asked if they had a sound system, because sometimes I get a little quiet. Yeah. So going back to the emotional refractory period, when you experience a shift in your emotions, you have a change in the level of neurological arousal in your body. Whatever state you're in, your body tries to maintain it. So what happens is your unconscious mind begins to shift its perceptual filters. It begins to parse the information in your environment in such a way that it re-triggers or reactivates the emotional state that you're in. Anybody here ever buy a new car? Anybody here ever spent a lot of time researching that new car before they bought it? Then they went out and you just went out and did it, right? I just fly by the seat of my pants. Right? And you drive in your car home, happy as a clam, and every motherfucker bought the same car on the same day is driving it around, right? Motherfucker being a technical term, by the way. Right? By the way, like I said, politically incorrect language and stuff like that offends you, you shouldn't be here. What happened? It's your unconscious mind became very, very sensitized to certain types of information. And that is the information that it called your conscious attention to. The other information was always is still there, but you're not consciously being drawn to it. That is the emotional refractory period in action. Anybody here ever been in an argument with somebody? No. Not me, nah. I'm peaceful, motherfucker, right? Now, maybe you went through that argument process. You resolved the argument, or so you thought. And then for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, everything you said pissed them off again. What's that about? Welcome to the world of the emotional refractory period. Anytime you experience an emotional state, your unconscious mind does not ask your permission, it does not give you a warning, it will simply shift what you consciously pay attention to. And you will focus on and target on the elements in any communication, context, or environment that re-trigger or reinforce the emotional state that you're in. Now, how do we use that on a practical level? Well, it's very simple. Once we understand basic NLP rapport, then we start building on that. You see, if I understand how to entrain your nervous system, which is basically all rapport is, it's the physics principle of entrainment. It has nothing to do with whether you believe it can happen or not. I can pull up YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video of metronomes side by side. And in 4 minutes, 41 metronomes synchronize. Anything made of molecules, anything that's in motion, seeks synchronicity. It can't not happen. Okay? So when I start talking to you about state control and I start talking to you about entrainment and rapport and all these other weird words I'm going to throw at you, it's based on physics, not belief. So the things I'm going to teach you are as reliable as the laws of physics if you can get out of your own way. You want to be super powerful at hypnosis? Learn the state control stuff I'm going to talk to you about tonight. If you want to find the science behind what I'm talking about, you can go to heartmath.org. Yeah, okay? Your heart is the biggest, most powerful rhythmic source in your body. It radiates an energy field 8 feet in diameter that can be measured with instruments. It interacts with the proprioceptive nervous system of a human being, and they seek synchronicity. When that happens, whatever you feel, the other person starts to feel pre-consciously. It doesn't matter if you're consciously intending it or not. Okay? It has to happen. For most of us, though, that process is happening at random and by default. We're not conscious of it, we don't know it's there, therefore it's random. Most of us are in this room because we want to take the randomness out of our lives. We want to take the randomness out of our communication. We want to get the things we want in the quickest, easiest, most satisfying way possible. Would that be true? Least control. Sure. Okay. So we talk about state control. It's not just about pretending, because I don't believe in pretending works, but there's more powerful stuff. Okay. And since that seems to be where a lot of this is going from. If you want to be really good at hypnosis, all you have to do is be really good at state control. In my system, even though I'm a leading expert in conversational hypnosis, if you come to my training, the first day you won't learn a single language pattern. What you will learn are very, very intense emotional state control drills that send you in and out of certain emotional states physiologically and as an act of will, and then you learn to transmit them back and forth. Because if your state is right, see, most of us worry about having the right words. We're worried about the right thing to say. You don't need it. If your state is right, everything from the reptilian brain up changes your perception of reality to the point where you could recite the alphabet and have a high probability of getting your outcome if the state control part is right. Does that make sense?
State control, what do you mean by state control?
The psycho-emotional state you're in, the state of physiology, the state of emotion that you're in, and the amount of amplitude or energy that you're putting out.
You will talk today about how to create.
Yeah, you're going to do it right now. So everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. Nobody's going to be on camera, Laurel. It's all right. All right. This is now, and if you guys want to go and do the research, I'm going to give you lots of research material. You don't have to believe anything I say. All you got to do is do what I say, do the drill, get the experience, and if you want to go check the science, I'll give you all the research. Okay? First thing I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to remember a time in your life when you saw something you wanted, you decided you wanted it, you knew you wanted it, you made a plan to get it, you put that plan into operation, and you went for it, and you got it big time. And I want you to stand the way you were standing at the moment you realized you got everything you wanted. I want you to breathe the way you were breathing. I want you to assume that posture, assume that physiology. Let that energy come back. That's right. Get into it. Now double it. Notice there's a certain place in your body where that energy starts. Notice that there's a color associated with that feeling. Point to where you feel it. As you point to where you feel it, double the spin of it. Okay, so much for the sound. It's all right. All right. Go back to the feeling. Go back to the physiology. Now, while holding that physiology of absolute triumph, of absolute victory, of being a winner, without changing anything, without changing a single thing, try to feel bad. Notice you can't do it. Now, here's what I want you to do. While holding on to that feeling of victory, I want you to shift your posture and just lower your head and roll your shoulders forward. Almost like a depressed posture. And try to feel good. Now while holding on to that, now allow yourself to become a little bit more down. Now while holding on to that depressed feeling, or that down feeling, shift your body back to the victorious posture. And try to feel bad. Notice you can't do it. All right? But have a seat. Derek, what'd you learn?
Two things. I have really bad at visualizing, but body language and posture.
When we try to control our state, what most of us try to do is we try to control our emotional state as an act of will. We try to create a visualization. Come on in. We try to create a visualization or bring back a memory that causes us to feel a certain way. In most cases, that's a very weak way to do it. There's a much stronger way, a much more reliable way, and that's through using your body. You see, context and environment, or context, emotional arousal, they can all override your willpower. Your willpower is the weakest part of you. It's based on two elements. It's based on the amount of glucose in your system and the amount of sleep that you've had. Okay? If you want to do the research on that, there's a book called Willpower by a guy named Roy Baumeister. He's done intense research on willpower. Okay? Huh? Willpower by Roy Baumeister. B-A-U-M-E-I-S-T-E-R, I believe. Okay? So willpower, it's the junk food of the mind. Okay? There's this constant worry about people in the hypnosis world about making people do things against their will. Most people have no willpower to speak of. Okay? They don't exercise it enough to have any. Okay? And the minute their nervous system gets too aroused, whatever critical factor they have checks out. Okay? That is a trance, by the way. You don't have to be somnolent to be in a deep state of trance. Okay? What we want to do, especially those of you who want to be very, very powerful in your ability to use conversational hypnosis, the last thing you want to induce in people most of the time is this drowsy feeling of or this confused feeling. It's not. You want to be engaged. You want to have them absorbed. You want to have them focused, kind of like you guys are now. Right? It's the meta elements of your communication that will actually drive your hypnotic abilities. It's not the language patterns. The language patterns are the icing on the cake. It's your ability to deliver in a way that arouses and excites the nervous system, that creates focus and absorption, that causes people to go deeply into trance. but the trances have different dynamics to them based on the states. So you're, as a hypnotist, your job, again, isn't putting people into trance. It's getting them from the trance they're in to the trance that's most useful for them getting their outcome. Hopefully, if you're ethical, come on in. It's all right. Yes, it is. Come on in. It's all right. I won't tell. Nobody look at him. All right. The secret is dovetailing what you want with what they want, which goes back to marketing. It goes back to emotional arousal. It goes back to all of these things. So the first thing that we have to talk about. Yes?
I have a question. The exercise we did, I could not connect because I am kinesthetic and I was focused on other people talking.
Okay, so when you get a chance,
what
practice.
kind of suggestion would you give me so I can get in touch with those feelings?
Come here. Okay, so first of all, when we're talking about state control and controlling our emotional state, the first thing we need to understand is there's two ways most people go about it, okay? First one is we try to do it through an act of will. We try to will ourselves into a certain state. Most of the time, that will last as long as you can, until the next squirrel runs past you, okay? But if you practice what I'm about to show you, and we've just done the first version of it, if you practice what I'm showing you and you understand the principle behind it, you can be dead calm in the middle of a war zone because it's based on physiology.
That's what I mean.
Okay, so do you remember a time when you were relaxed, when you felt really confident?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all I want you to do is I want you to stand that way. Yeah, and for 2 minutes I just want you to hold it. Don't worry about anything else. Just hold the physiology. Okay. Now, what happens is, for those of you who want to do the research on this, there's a woman by the name of Amanda Cuddy. It was a TED Talk. It's called Postures of Power, I think. And basically, shoulders back, relax. Okay. What she discovered was that if you held any physiology for as little as 2 minutes, your emotional state would change. She went so far as to have people hold these natural victory postures, and within 2 minutes, their natural testosterone output went up 25%. Okay? I've been teaching this since the early 2000s, but science finally got around to teaching it. The physiology that you hold is more powerful than the mindset you try to keep. Mm-hmm. Your body will always override your psychology. Unless you are Spetsnaz or special forces where you're specifically trained to work and operate in those kinds of environments, your physiology will reliably override your psychology 10 times out of 10 if the stress level rises enough. But if we understand that principle, how are you feeling?
Great, actually. I feel like rolling my shoulder back, lifting my chin up, and I connect with it much better than what we did before.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay? Give her a big round of applause. Okay? Once you understand that one principle, and again, there's other principles that stack onto it, but you can be in the middle of a gun battle. And if you have enough presence of mind, this is where we still have to have the conscious mind kind of in there. I'm not vilifying the conscious mind at all, but each part of us has to do their job, right? If you're going to go present to a group or a CEO of a company, and your state's in your shoes, you're going to lose before you walk in. So the first step in the critical path of influence is state control. You've got to control your state. That's level 1. Level 2 is rapport. Can anybody venture? Does anybody here not know what I mean when I say rapport? Okay, you don't know what I mean? Okay.
They will be like us. We will be like each other.
Okay. Rapport is one of those words that if you ask 10 different people what rapport means, you'll get 10 different responses. In the world according to David, rapport has 3 categories. Rapport is this state of being in sync with somebody. Okay? It's not necessarily a feeling of liking, though. Let's understand that.
No, I'm saying be like them.
To be like them? Yeah, in a manner of speaking, to be like them. But I want you to think more in terms of resonating at the same frequency, kind of moving in synchronicity. There's a two-way communication going on. And that's the important thing to remember when we're talking about rapport skills. is there's a two-way communication going on. There's information being sent and information being received. Most of it preconsciously. Okay? In the world according preconsciously, yeah. Remember, write this down and tattoo it to your forehead. The conscious mind is the least informed and the last to know. Period. By the time information reaches your conscious awareness, it's already gone through 2 other levels of your brain and an uncountable number of filters. In NLP, we talk about how all information we get is deleted, distorted, and generalized. Well, that's a very, very gross generalization of all the subtle filtering mechanisms that go on to create our subjective reality. Yes?
You say the conscious mind is?
The conscious mind is the least informed and the last to know. Okay? Most of us like to believe that we think in facts and data, figures, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. Okay? You guys know that you have 3 brains, right? This means yes, this means no. There will be a test. Okay? Let me talk about the 3 brains real quick, because if you're going to do marketing, if you're going to do things that really want to inspire people to take action, you got to know what brain you're talking to. Okay? Okay, the very center of your brain, roughly, this is your brain on David, by the way. You have what the Soviets like to call the paleocortex. It's your reptile brain. It's the part of you that thinks and acts in primal drives. It is the oldest, most powerful part of you. Okay? I consult with about 30 different lawyers, personal injury attorneys, on how to influence everyone from expert witnesses to judges and juries, voir dire, closing statements, things like that. But even before I came along, there was a book called Reptile, which if you aren't familiar with it, get it. It's about $200 or $300, but worth every penny. And it talks about how to present things to the reptilian brain. If your budget won't cut the Reptile. Reptile. It's by Don Keenan and David Ball. Okay.
What is the second word? I'm sorry.
Reptile.
Tile.
Okay. It's a very expensive book, but if you really want to be powerful, I mean powerful, understand the principles in that book. If you can't afford that book, there's another book that's not quite as good but very useful. It's called Pitch Anything by Orrin Claff. Pitch Anything. P-I-T-C-H. Anything. K-L-A-F-F. Orrin Claff. Now, Claff's book is almost a direct steal from the Los Angeles seduction community, except that he's using it to pitch multi-million-dollar deals to venture capitalists. And it's all about frame control and talking to the reptile brain. So there's a saying in the book, Reptile. It goes something like this, and this is something that's worth remembering. I am the reptile. I do not get angry. I make you angry, so you'll do what I want. I am the reptile. I do not get afraid. I make you afraid, so you'll do what I want.
Which is what?
I tweak your limbic system. I tweak your perceptual filters and your emotions so that the things you consciously and unconsciously pay attention to reinforce the actions I want you to take. And then once you begin doing that, I activate your neocortex, which is so you have the paleocortex, you have the limbic system, which is your reptilian or emotional brain. Then you have your neocortex, which I like to call your rational lying brain. Your neocortex is the part of you that thinks in facts and figures. It's the part of you that generates reasons for justifying why you do the things you do that may not have anything to do with the real reason you're doing them. Okay? How many people here are hypnotists? Raise your hands. Okay, how many people didn't realize they were hypnotists until I asked? We talk about resistance in hypnosis. We talk about resistance in any kind of interaction. Well, resistance only has three major sources. Okay? Resistance comes from any threat that we perceive to the self, or specifically our self-image. If it threatens how we see ourselves, we inherently begin to resist it. If it threatens how we think other people will see us, we resist it. If it threatens what we know to be true, we resist it. Okay? Pretty much any form of resistance, so short of another one I'm going to talk about very shortly called reactance, is what is going to be the seat of most of the resistance you will run into when trying to use these skills. Now, if we know, let's think strategically now. Man, we're not, yes, sir?
Oh, no,
Oh, okay. I thought you were raising your hand, that's all. So let's think strategically now, before we get into language patterns or anything else. If we know that most resistance arises from any threat to how we perceive ourselves, how we think other people will perceive us, or what we know to be true, what if we built things into our persuasion message that reinforced how we want people to see us, how we want other people to see us, what we know to be true? If we build those into our persuasion messages, they become more compelling. They become frictionless. Does that make sense? So if you're going to write marketing copy, like I know Doreen wants to write marketing copy, you might want to talk about how you'll see yourself being X, Y, Z, feeling more confident, more powerful, more at peace. And other people will notice that, and they'll be amazed at how quickly you've changed your whole life. And you'll realize how true that is because you can remember how you were. Right? Big picture stuff, right? But did you notice that as I began to talk about it, how you all started filling in your own details, finding elements in your own life when those things were true? That's called being specifically vague. You filled in all the details from your own life experience. That's called a trance. Right? If I can create a vessel for you to fill in your own words, or for you to fill in your own meanings, then your resistance goes away. Right? So if I can build these things in, again, this is all a little peripheral stuff that I just want to put out there and let it kind of gel and come together for you in such a way that it makes perfect sense and is usable for you by the end of the night. But let it just percolate unconsciously for right now. So I'm put that out there for you. Okay? So the basic process of communication that we want to start to work with is we want to communicate from the meat suit up. We want to communicate from the body to the limbic system, to the emotions, and then ultimately we want to top it off with facts and figures. This is why this is important. The more the meat, the more the body is engaged in the process, the flimsier and less factual the data can be, but the unconscious mind will still go for it. I'm very serious about that. The more I have a friend of mine who wrote a book called Real World Seduction. Okay? He's crazy dude. Brilliant, crazy as a loon, but brilliant.
What's the first word?
Real World Seduction.
Real world.
And he would tell stories about how he would go to these bars, and he would get women all excited, and then ask them to come back to his apartment to look at his stamp collection. And they would go.
Oh, I heard those, yeah.
Okay? It's all right. No, here's the thing. Here's the point. The more the nervous system is engaged, the more emotional arousal, in whatever direction, whether it's for a business proposal or a date or whatever, the more the emotions are engaged, the deeper trance state you have. You don't need to be somnolent. You don't need to have the guy like, and literally snoring in his chair. What you need is a way to get them focused and absorbed in what you're saying. The fastest way to do that is to find out what is most emotionally important to them and give it to them. In NLP terms, we call that criteria and values. Does anybody here not know what I mean when I say criteria and values? Okay, you don't? Anybody else? Okay. Each and every one of us like to think we have an identity. Okay? But we don't. We have multiple identities. But the building blocks of those identities are our values, the things that we hold most precious to us. And with each of those values has a feeling, a label, and a checklist. Like say one of my highest values is freedom. Okay, well the question might be, how do you know when you're free? Well, I know I'm free when I can go where I want, do what I want, with whom I want, for as long as I want. The label is freedom. The feeling is usually happiness or some other emotion. but there's a checklist that lets me know I'm getting it. When you tap in to somebody's emotions, somebody's values, they go into a profound trance state. They experience extreme pleasure. You understand what I'm saying? So if I were to say to Derek, Derek, what's important to you about learning how to be like Darren Brown? All right, that's all right. I already know now. All right, but if all right, let's go with Doreen. Doreen, what's important to you about learning the skills?
So I can communicate better with the right niche, with the right.
So you can communicate better with the right niche.
Yeah.
With the right what? What was the other word you used?
Niche.
The niche. Okay. And what's important about that? If you were to be able to communicate and use the right words to communicate with the right niche, what would that do for you?
I'll get busier.
You get busier?
I'll be able to help them more, and I will activate the word of mouth advertising, so I can save more money on advertising.
Absolutely. And once you activate that word of mouth and then save more on advertising so you can communicate with the right niche, ultimately, just so I understand you better, what's that going to do for you?
Freedom.
Freedom. Did you hear the emotion? That is what we're going for.
I can send my clients to anyone that needs
Look,
it.
see how she's giving you information? She's volunteering information now? That is what you'll always get.
Yeah.
When you tap into somebody's deeply held values and criteria, they will start volunteering information. They can't stop the emotion.
True.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Now, did you notice that all I did was repeat your words back to you?
No, until you told me.
The words that come out of a person's mouth are the most perfect words to their nervous system. They have a direct pipeline to her values. If all I do is learn to describe my own experiences using another person's key words, the words that they lean on, they will go into a profound state of trance. They will feel connected to me, and they will feel like I understand them better than anybody they've ever met in minutes. Look at her. And it's ethical. It's cool. Now, here's the corollary to that. Now that I know that about Doreen, I now have a direct pipeline to everything that are the building blocks of her emotional identity. Which means a person cannot go against their most deeply held values and criterias without experiencing intense emotional pain. So it's a tremendous power that you have to create a lifelong client, or friend, or lover, or a stalker. Someone who will not rest until they get payback for the emotional hurt that you've caused. Okay? So back when I had my first martial arts school in the early 90s, back in Coral Springs, Florida, this was how I primarily booked most of my patients, or most of my students. I used a technique we call the echo technique. Okay? And basically what it amounted to was whatever words came out of their mouth, those are the words I gave back. So it would sound something like this. It would be, ring, ring, hello, this is Coral Springs Martial Arts Academy. This is David, how can I help you? So, hey, my name's Bernice. I'm looking for karate lessons for my 10-year-old son, Bobby. Oh, hey, Bernice, so you're looking for karate lessons for your 10-year-old son, Bobby? Yeah! So, well, tell me more about what's important about getting karate lessons for your 10-year-old son. Well, he's a little small for his age. He could use a little bit more focus, and I'm afraid he might be getting a little bit of picked on at school. He's not telling me that, but I think that's kind of what you're getting. Oh, I see. So you think he's getting picked on at school a little bit, and he could use a little bit of focus, and he's a little small for his age. Yeah! Well, Bernice, I'll tell you, we have a special program just for kids who are a little small for their age, and who are, want a little bit more of, we call it bully proofing, but it's really for people who might be getting picked on. And what we're doing right now is we're offering 2 free classes plus a uniform. And Bobby can come in, try the class out, and we can show him how to get focus and really kind of defend himself and stand up to those bullies who might be picking on him. We have 2 appointment slots available. We have one at 5:30 today and one at tomorrow at 6:30. Which would be easier for you? 5:30. Right? Great, I'll pencil you in. Boom. 90% show up rate. You see, most of us, if we work in sales or any kind of marketing, we're taught what was commonly known as a traditional features and benefits approach. We just keep throwing benefit after feature after feature after feature, hoping something sticks. Right? No. The fastest way to close the sale and actually have them ask you for it is to ask them what they want. Galina, what do you want to get out of this class today?
Well, we just started meditate. Me, myself, I started meditate, so I feel like it's the same with hypnosis.
Okay, so you just started to meditate and
I want to learn more about self-hypnosis.
learn about more self-hypnosis.
Yes.
Okay.
But also, we provide service to people, and it's physical service, right?
Who's
But
we?
Me and my husband.
And provide service to people for what specifically?
It's about fitness and...
Okay, great.
So, and I feel like all the problems people have, it's all mental. So I would like to help them maybe faster and better if I will know how to communicate with them better.
So if you could communicate better, you could help people faster and better. Absolutely. And you work with a lot of physically challenged people?
Yeah.
All right, okay. I just want to understand.
Mhm.
Right, okay. So what did I do? I used, how did it feel?
Wonderful.
That's
I feel
my
like you
point.
understand me.
Exactly. If you just move through the world making everyone around you feel ridiculously good, they will give you stuff. They will literally just give you stuff. Oh,
Is that deeper than rapport?
yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's really what I want to be on everything. Relationships.
People will tell you everything you need to know to give them, to make them do exactly what you want them to do once you see the matrix, once you understand the levels of information that are around you. Okay? And again, I don't want to overwhelm you with everything. I just got to...
That's why you was asking questions what we want to learn, so
Yes.
you can give us what...
How can I give you what you want until I know? Right? Because each and every one of you here is unique. You're special. But you all came here because there was something you wanted. And as you connect the reason you came to the information I'm giving you, come on in, Christian. As you connect what you want to the information I'm giving you, you'll naturally find, logically and intuitively, new ways that you can begin to apply this information in a way that makes sense, that's useful for you, at whatever level of skill that you have. And the more you work with this level, at whatever level of skill that you have, the more rapidly you'll go deeper into these understandings and these learnings and be able to use them even more effectively and feel good about it because you already know that you're doing it 100% ethically. You're finding out what people most want in life and linking what you have to offer to what they want in a way that both of you get it. And isn't that why we're all here?
Yep.
Except for maybe Derek, who wants to... No, I'm just teasing you, brother. Yes?
Can you give some maybe non-verbal ways to do that for someone? Let's say you're dealing with someone who's just, a rock, and they're just not very talkative, and maybe you try to start a conversation or ask them some questions, and they're just not responsive.
Okay, I need a context.
Let's say you go into a business meeting.
Okay.
And there's a very powerful client in the meeting, and in the room before the meeting started, and you want to try to establish a rapport with them, and they're just maybe dismissive, or they just say yes or no answer. They don't really engage.
Okay. Well, first of all, never go in feeling one down. That's what we call frame control. Okay, and that's a little bit outside of the purview of what we're going to do here today. If somebody is not willing to engage in a conversation with you, write them off. I'm serious.
But if you can,
Well, if you can't, you can't. All right, and you do the best you can. But you have to go in. If you go into a situation in your mind already one down, you've already lost. This is the hardest part about. Does everybody here know what I mean when I talk about frame control? This means yes. This means no. Okay, think of a frame. Think about each and every one of you is moving through the world. You are the writer, director, and star of your own movie. Okay? You get to decide who the star is, who the protagonist is, who the antagonist is, what the plot line is, yada, yada, yada. And as long as everybody plays their role, life goes fine. But when people start to step outside of their role, they start to improvise, they're no longer being who you want them to be, right? Anytime two or more people get together, there's a battle for who's going to control that frame, who's going to control the meaning of the interaction. Okay? The common example that I use is a dating one because I do a lot of work with relationships and advanced communication. When you see a man approach a woman, in a bar or a venue, who's usually doing the approaching? This is actually a trick question, but yeah. But you know who's initiating it most of the time is the woman.
Yeah.
Women initiate 60% of all approaches. They just do it so subtly men give themselves credit for it. But in the traditional dating scenario, a man approaches a woman and initiates contact. The frame, the structure of the frame, in any given frame, you can hold one of three positions. You can be the dominant, you can be an equal, or you can be a subordinate. Okay? You understand this?
Yes.
When you go into a meeting with a venture capitalist or something like that, and you go in as a subordinate, you're basically giving up all the power in the relationship. Okay? Now, most people don't realize that you can shift positions in a frame very subtly. That's a whole art form in and of itself. And that's why I recommend the book by Claff, because it's all about exactly what you're talking about. It's dead on what you're talking about. But on a big picture level, if I approach Doreen or Malcolm from a position of, let's go back to the dating sequence, because I'm getting kind of off base. When the man approaches a woman, who's the prize? No. All right, I know where you come from. In most cases, people who haven't been trained, who don't understand the social dynamics, if Igor is approaching Galina in a dating scenario, she's the prize. Why? Because Igor is seeking something from Galina, right? Because of that, because Igor is the seeker, Galina holds all the power. Galina can give or withhold validation or access. Does that make sense? So if you're going to pitch a product, if you're going to pitch an opportunity, you have to come in as the person giving the opportunity, not the person asking for the sale. Two different positions, right? But just that subtle shift in your brain will change your physiology. It'll change your body language and it'll change your tonality. Pre-consciously. Just that tweak mentally will do it. If we have time, you guys want to go into it, we'll do some frame game exercises. I have a lot of that stuff. A lot of that stuff. But a lot of it goes back to state control. State control. If you can control your physiology, you can control your posture, your breathing, you can control your state. If you can control your state, you control the frame. Okay? When two or more people get together, especially a group of guys who don't know each other, you always see this. It's the dick contest. Right? 5 or 6 guys get together and everybody starts jockeying for position. Who's the alpha? Right? And there's organized chaos until the alpha emerges. The minute the alpha is established, everybody falls in line. Right? Once it's a frame. That's all it is. Human beings are conditioned pre-consciously and genetically to create frames. We're always trying to achieve a position in the hierarchy so we know how to act. Hear what I said? So we know how to act. That means we can change it. Most of us don't realize we can change the frame. We can change our position in the frame. And so we're stuck in whatever position of the person who runs the frame. If the person, like the CEO, is looking down on you, and you don't have the courage to just tell him to go pound sand in a way that's appropriate, but you walk in there like you're begging for the sale, he's going to make you do all, especially the ones nowadays, like New York and some of these East Coasters, the ones who wear shorts to work because they can, they're going to make you do all kinds of somersaults before they kick you out, right? But if you go in there holding your frame and saying, look, this is what I got, you either want it or you don't, man. This is an opportunity for you. If you don't take it, I got 6 other appointments today. Right? Now, you don't do it in a way that challenges their self-esteem, but you also don't present it in a way that lowers yours. Does that make sense? It's hard to do. It's hard to do, especially when we're starting to make pictures in our brain, because that's usually what happens. That's an NLP thing. We make pictures of people who have status in our life. We make the pictures of them really, really big and out of proportion to how we see ourselves. And so we act that way in real life. If all we do, take somebody who has a lot of stature and who kind of intimidates you a little bit. Bring up that picture, and if you could imagine someplace in the space around you, reach out and touch it. Physically reach out and touch it. Okay? Trace the edges of it with your fingers. That means do what the fuck I tell you. Reach out and trace the edges of it with your fingers. Huh?
I'm not coming up with the situation.
All right, well, pretend one.
Yeah.
And then all I want you to do is just take and go, shh, like closing a window on your iPhone. Notice what happens to the feelings. Now, lift it up like that. What happens to the feelings? Oh, now bring it down. Make it even smaller. What happens to the feeling? Now put that shit behind you. Now what happens? Ooh, hey. That's where that motherfucker belongs. Right? What the hell just happened? Whole room full of people just went. Below the threshold of conscious awareness is a completely different coding system that forms the foundation of how you perceive reality. We call it the matrix. I call it the grid. Okay? When we can tap into that underlying code, we can change how our nervous system processes any memory or any thought or any frame. Okay? If all you did was take pictures of people who you're going to present to, and you make your picture really big and theirs much smaller, you're going to walk in 10 times more confident without having to do anything else. Right? If you changed your physiology, you're going to walk in there and you're going to radiate, important word, you're going to radiate unconsciously, preconsciously to their nervous system a different frame. Their perceptual filters are going to shift, and the first impression is going to predispose them to viewing you as more authoritative. And you didn't say a word. Is that good enough?
So now you back to what you had. Yeah, that's what I want right there. I call it the Dracula.
The Dracula.
You don't have to say nothing. You
That's
just
it. Yeah?
look.
Well, there's like...
Exactly. But yeah, that's basically it in a general sense.
Okay. So, just to recap, the first step is always control your state. I don't care if you've studied Ericksonian language for 50 years. If you walk into an interaction and your state's out of whack, nothing happens. You'll be completely incongruent. You will sound like a moron. Okay? I regularly sound like a moron. Just kidding.
We don't know that.
That's what I was going to say. Body language.
If,
got
if,
me fooled.
it's all in the body. Guys, I'm telling you. Erickson couldn't use his body.
That was the thing.
You got to understand something. He didn't have a body to use. He only had his eyes for most of his life. I mean, he managed to get out of the wheelchair. But most of the discoveries that he made about people were through observation, because that's all he had. Right? We have much more. We have much more juice that we can push into the system. Okay? So, what time is it, John?
It's just right.
Let's take a 7-minute break. Yes, sir.
You got state control report. Could you just at least give the other 4?
I was going to give them to you anyway.
I know it, but like,
All right. Here they go.
I need to write it.
All right. Here, I'll give you all. Tell you what. I'll give you all 6. I've actually.
Third, yeah, there you go.
Relax, Derek. Relax.
There you go.
Breathe.
I don't
Om.
know when you'll be back in
You're
LA.
only going to take 10%, right?
By the way, this video will be available on my website. This video will be available on my website.
Okay, good.
Okay. Traditionally, I post all the videos from my meetups on my NLP Power website or my Covert Hypnosis website for about a week to 2 weeks. And then they go into the members area for my personal students only. But again, you guys came out, and I'm going to deliver as much to you as I can, as deeply as I can, in the time that we have. And if you want more, I'll show you where to go. Okay, so back to the critical path of influence, right? We said the first word, Derek, what was the first one? State control. 80% of all the persuasion that I do, guys and gals, is right here. State control. Second is rapport. Rapport has 3 levels in my world. We have traditional rapport, which is NLP style rapport. You have vibing, and you have coherence. Coherence is that deep molecular level rapport that I mentioned. If you want to go do the science on that, heartmath.org. I won't get too far into it, but it's physics. It's physiological entrainment. Physics. Okay? Has nothing to do with suggestion or belief. Can't not happen. the most powerful form of rapport you can get. After that, it goes into language patterns.
Can we go back a little bit with the NLP, traditional NLP, what was it?
Rapport. Rapport is when I talk about that, is the traditional matching and mirroring, pacing and leading style that NLP, Ericksonian hypnosis, many sales programs teach you. How many people who do not know what I mean when I say pacing and leading? Okay, if you don't know what pacing and leading is, a pace in neurolinguistic speak is basically anything that can be verified as true. So if I say Galena is blonde, everybody here can look at Galena and say, okay, yeah, she's blonde, because I can verify it through my senses. I can also say, it can also be a truism that is verified cognitively. You're all sitting here having certain thoughts, right? The first thing I say when I say you're all having certain thoughts is you do a systems check. Well, am I? Yeah, I am. Shit, he's right. Right? You cannot resist pacing and leading. If all I did was sit here and tell you things that were true about the environment, you would go into a profound state of trance, aka boredom. But you would also lose track of when I was actually telling you things that were true and things that were things that I just wanted you to do instead. This is even before I used language patterns. This is one of Erickson's big things, was just pacing and talking about things in the environment that you just couldn't argue with until your critical factor just checked out. Yeah.
I think that's what politicians use a lot.
They do a lot of what I call cold reading. I call it the 60-40 split. Everybody here knows what cold reading is? Okay. Cold reading is where you make observations about people and speak in such a way that they can't argue. Like most, no, I don't even want to get into it. I don't want to get into it. I will get off on tangents. I love questions. I love dialogue. I love interaction, but I go off on tangents. So, ask at your own peril. Once you get past your language patterns, you get into what we call state management. And there's a gazillion ways to manage somebody's state. But the distinction I want you to make in this process is that when we're talking about state control, we're talking about yours. What you do to your body, to your brain, to your emotions. We're talking about state management. We're talking about running them through or initiating in them the state, process, or experience that we want them to have. Now, in order to figure that out, there's one thing we all have to start with. Remember, when you're going to do any kind of hypnosis, any kind of persuasion, how many people here have a long-term goal of maybe writing a book someday? Did you write it? Excellent. Give her a big round of applause. How many people here have tried writing that book at least 2 or 3 times and didn't get past the first or second page? You ever know why? Because you started from the beginning. If you want to be successful in writing or creating anything, begin at the end and work backwards. Is that how you did it? See? Always start with the end in mind. If you're going to enter any kind of persuasion interaction, you've got to know what your outcome is and how you know you're getting it. Because if you don't have it established, you won't know how to change your course. Most of us, when we try to write a book or create a communication, we start at the beginning, try to figure it out as we go, and keep adding pieces and wind up somewhere completely different. So always establish your outcome. State management is the primary way we start to get a little bit creative. We could go into states. What kind of emotional states do these people have to be in? What kind of processes do we want them to go through in their mind? Right? How can we create analogs that establish patterns in their brain that generate certain types of behaviors? Right? After that, we go into process. Process. In other words, what's the order and sequence of words that came out of their mouth? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic. What's their strategy, as NLP would like to say? Which, by the way, if all you do is repeat a person's words back to them, you've already shortcut 80% of that. If you just give them their words back in the order and sequence that they came out of their mouth, you will automatically be in their optimum strategy. You will automatically be in their modalities, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic representations. You won't have to guess. Everything will line up. You don't have to get creative. You don't have to elicit anything. All you have to do is pay attention and give it back to them, and they will go into a profound state of rapport and compliance with you. NLP will teach you very intricate, complicated ways of eliciting somebody's strategy that take forever. You don't need it. Because whatever comes out of their mouth has already been processed by the part that you're seeking to influence. So just do it back. Okay, I'll tell you stories about when they flew me to Israel to do trainings for security companies and stuff. Never have a tougher audience than a room full of Israelis. Woo! What's that? You said Jesus?
I said Jesus.
I know you're Israeli. They flew me out there. They flew me out there. I had to do trainings for the VPs. I had to do trainings for the R&D department, the marketing department. And man, they did not want to believe any of it. They did not want to believe anything I had to say. So I had to zap them. I'll tell you that story later. The last is what we actually started with earlier, is criteria and values.
Sorry.
The last, the persuasion bullseye, is criteria and values. The emotional foundations of their identity. When you talk to somebody about their criteria and values, their emotional hot buttons, you automatically engage the reptile brain, the limbic system, and the neocortex. You stimulate and caress the building blocks of what's most important to that person in their life, in that context, at that moment, in a way that they cannot ignore. Okay? They will go into a profound trance state. But it wouldn't be a trance state that the average hypnotist would recognize. But it's one that's extremely useful. Because you've bypassed their critical factor, you've created within them a state of acceptable selective thinking. Now all you have to do is keep what you offer connected to what the words that came out of their mouth for a long enough period of time. Their convincer strategy, which is another program that runs inside their head, will cycle through it a set number of times, and they will do business out of default. As long as you do it congruently. Okay? Now, I didn't show you the diagram. I showed you the process. I'll do this real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Is this useful, by the way? You guys having fun with this? All right. Sometimes, like, getting the lesson from me is like sipping from a fire hose. Okay. This is from my $2,000 covert hypnosis course called Killer Influence. But if you were to look at this, you can see that I have the linear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, right? This is your persuasion bullseye. At the center of the persuasion bullseye is a person's criteria and values. They are the foundations of their identity. If you change a person's criteria and values, you change who they are. Most people don't have the skill to change that, but it does exist. Okay? From the periphery to the center means global to specific. Anything I'm using via state control, with rapport, with language patterns, affects anyone within the sound of my voice. So I could be speaking to one person or an entire room, just like I am now. You understand that? As I move through to the center of the diagram, the level of influence and persuasive ability that I wield becomes exponentially more powerful. However, it also becomes exponentially more focused on one unique individual. So utilizing and understanding this model, we have a universal model of persuasion that works in large groups, written communication, texting, we've tested it, instant messenger, any form of linguistic communication, from global to one-on-one. You follow this process, step A, step B, step C. The only thing you need after this is having the sensory acuity, the ability to perceive if what you're doing is having the effect that you want. Does that make sense? You don't need a lot of language patterns. You don't need... First of all, NLP teaches over 31 different discrete language patterns. Which ones do you use when? How many people here are familiar with all the Ericksonian language patterns? I'm not.
Familiar.
Yeah. I can barely spell complex equivalence. But the reason that this is visually diagrammed like this is because one of the limitations of our auditory processing system, our ability to hear, is it's linear. And so many times when I start explaining things, I have to actually use the language patterns, and so you go into trance and you kind of consciously miss it. Even though it goes in, it doesn't consciously register right away. But when you see this graphically, you can understand how it all fits together. Does that make it more clear for you? Okay. Yes, sir.
Most of my career as a software engineer, I was freelance.
Mm-hmm.
Early in the career, I found it very difficult to convince clients that they needed to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I started gravitating to the idea of listening to what they said and then asking them questions to let them come up with a conclusion
Perfect.
themselves.
Right on.
And then I told them how smart they were.
Yep.
And then I got what I wanted.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like what you're talking about.
It's exactly the same thing. Give him a big round of applause. Here's, when it comes to covert influence, and when I say covert, I don't mean unethical. I just mean we're not being, hey, I'm trying to persuade you. People will resist what you tell them, even if they know it's for their own good. Even if they know you have their best intentions and their best outcomes at heart, they will still resist you. That's a form of resistance known as reactance. We'll cover that at another time. But if you give them the information or talk to them in such a way that they come to the conclusion about it, they don't resist that. So what we want to begin to do is talk to people in a way that they presuppose, that they come to the conclusion we want them to have on their own without us having to tell them. That's one of the secrets behind Ericksonian metaphors. You never explain your metaphor, right? For those of you who are familiar with that at all. Not, but, so before I turn you loose on the bathroom, you guys have any questions about anything I've covered?
Yes.
You are.
No, he was asking like about things that we want to cover here today.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just working right now on self-management to be more productive during the day at the same time. Second thing is, if I want to program myself to wake up at a certain time, how can I do that?
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's easy. I actually teach that. We actually, in our hypnosis classes, what we do is we actually have people go into trance for exactly 30 seconds and have their unconscious mind bring them out, and we time them. So that's one of the first things that we teach in our hypnosis classes. Because we live in a culture, unfortunately, that teaches us not to trust our unconscious mind. And it devalues that side of us, and so we never play with it. We spend more time on reading, writing, and arithmetic than learn how to use our imagination, and how to manage our emotions. We want to be logical and rational. It's the weakest part of you. Trust me, I'm a hypnotist. All right, let's take 5 or 7 minutes, use the restroom, come back, we'll get into some language patterns and stuff. Okay?
Just want to let you guys know there's coffee up front as well as water. There's snacks that may be cold